Hi loves, welcome back to Olives. In today's video, I will be sharing with you how to make a milkmaid dress. So please keep on watching and let's get right into this video. We are going to start by making a bodice, but in this tutorial we are going to exclude the upper part of the bodice, more or less like an off shoulder. Okay, so here you have to decide how off you want your milkmaid top to look like. So I'm going to work with 7 inches, and this 7 inches will start from the starting line that I have marked right from the edge of the paper. Okay, so you can see the front and the back. So I'm going to begin 7 inches right on this line. From there, I'll mark my shoulder to nipple. Above the nipple, I'll go up by 1 inch to determine my chest line, which is about 8.5 inches. I'll mark my shoulder to under bust, which is 12.5. 16.5, which is my shoulder to waist or shoulder to half length. I'll mark these points across. On the back, we do not need the nipple line and the under bust line, so we will exclude that. Let's move on. On the chest line, I'm going to input quarter of my bust. On the waist, I'll mark quarter of the waist as well. I'll add 1 inch for that. I'll connect the chest line to the waist just as shown. Again, on the waist, I'll mark half of my bust pan, and I'll mark the same thing on the nipple line, come down by 1 inch. I'll draw a straight line to meet the waistline, which is the middle dart leg. From there, I'll mark half inch on both sides and also connect these points together. Next is to input half of our chest measurement right here on the starting line. Now mine is 12 inches. So depending on what you have, you divide it into 2, and I had 6 inches. Or you may also want to measure your across back or shoulder measurement, divide it by 2 and subtract 1 inch from it. So looking at mine, my across back is 14 inches, divided by 2 is 7. So subtracting 1 inch from 7 is still the 6 inches. So I'm going to connect these 6 inches to the chest line like this to create the armhole. Having done that, I'll place my cap right from my under bust, which means that the edge of the cap should align with your under bust. Okay, from the center front of the chest line, I'll mark 1 cm. I don't want exactly half inch, so I'll mark 1 cm this way and mark it on the nipple line. Put that to straight line. So I'll place the cap back again, and this 1 cm that I marked will be a guideline, so the edge of the cap will start right from there. From this first dart leg, I'll make a mark on the cap like this. You know, we'll be taking off the dart, so we don't need the darts to be included whilst marking the cap. Okay, so the points I've made will continue from the other dart leg, just like this. So let's try to understand better. Okay, so if we hadn't excluded the dart and we shape the cap after closing or taking off the dart, the actual shape of the cap that is supposed to be on the pattern will be reduced. Okay, that's the main reason. Now I'll take it this way. So I've stopped right on the first dart leg, right? With the same mark on the cap again, I'll just shift it this way to align with this dart leg, just like this, and I'll mark around the cap. I'll direct the end of the cap to meet the starting line like this. I came down by 1 cm again to lower the armhole, that's the chest line, for more ease sort of. And this will be taken off. That means this is also going to affect the back chest line, wherever the armhole will start from. From this side of the paper, I'll mark 1 inch as zip extension. I want to tighten the center back, so from this line I'll mark 0.75. You can definitely use 0.5. okay, so I'm going to connect this to the chest line as shown. So that is my new center back. So from there I'll remark the 1 inch zip extension. From the center back of the waistline, I'll input quarter of my waist and also 1 inch as that. Okay, to construct the back, we can't follow the new center back, otherwise the dart will look slanted. Okay, so for this reason we are going to use our initial center back. So from the nipple, I'll just come down by about 1.5. From the initial center back, I'll mark 3.5, which is half of my bust span on nipple to nipple, and I'll repeat the same thing on the waistline to have a straight line. I'll mark 1/2 inch on both sides of the middle dart line. I'll move on to connect them together. Just as we did on the front, from the center back we are going to mark 6 inches, and on the chest, quarter of my bust. Remember, we came down by 1 cm to create the new armhole, so that will be repeated on the back. I'll connect this to the waist and also connect the armhole together. If you have your back looking funny, do not worry. This is because we want to include that, okay? And also for the fact that we tighten the center back. Personally, I do not want to include that, so if I hadn't included that, it will have this shape with a pencil, right? So if you have anything like that, do not worry. By the time you stitch your dart, everything will make sense, okay? Moving on, I mostly say here that our back length is mostly shorter than our front length. So for this reason, it's either you reduce the center back by about 1 inch or a little more, you know, to prevent zip bulge. If I try to meet the sides of this together, they are the same because I use the front length for the back length, okay? So in case you maintain the real length of your back, then you have to introduce a bust dart, right, so that by the time you reduce it, it's going to align with the actual length of your back. I hope I really make sense, okay? In this tutorial, we use the same front length for the back, so we have to reduce the center back again to be able to prevent zip bulge, okay? So I went out by 1 inch. I'll connect it to the side like this, and this also will be taken off. I want the back neckline to curve a bit, so I'm going to use this armhole curve to kind of manipulate and make the curve. For this, since I don't want that, this is how my back bodice is going to look like. Some other time I can flip it back and make use of the dart. I want the front bodice to be one piece, so I'll move on to close the dart like this. We will quickly move on to working on the ruffle for the caps. With our cap size that we used from the beginning, we are going to measure this part of the curve, which is going to serve as the length. and mine is about 5.5 inches. From the edge of my paper, I'm going to mark these 5 inches across. For the width, you are going to measure from the center of your bust to the side. I had 9 inches, so I'm going to measure these 9 inches from here. I'll find the midpoint of 9 inches, which is 4.5. From the 5.5 inch line, I'm going to mark down 1 inch, and I'll use my curve to connect this to the center, which we marked as 4.5. okay, the armhole curve was not really giving me the shape I want, so I decided to use my freehand. So I curved this from the center like this, as shown, to the 1 inch. To get the exact shape I have here on this other side, I'm going to fold this paper with the midpoint like this, and I'll go ahead and cut. Above the length of the cap that I have here, I marked 1 inch, which is going to serve as the excess ruffle, mostly above the cap, right? So that is what I measured. I'm sure you can definitely do 1.5, okay, but 1 inch is okay. Now I want more ruffle, like I want more gathers, so I divided this paper into equal parts so I can cut and spread on another pattern paper. With how I numbered them respectively, I'm going to arrange them on this brown paper, and I use an interval of 1.5. I also went ahead to blend the bottom part together. That is it for the ruffle of our caps. We'll move on to working on the skirts. For the length of the skirt, you are going to subtract your half length from your full length. Okay, so mine is 21.5. From the edge of this paper, I'll mark down my waist to hip, which is 10 inches, and the full length, which is 21 inches. Then I'll mark this across. From the blue line, which is also the starting line, I'm going to mark quarter of my waist, and I want to include that on the skirt, so I'll add 1 inch for that, and also 1.5 as side seam allowance. On the hip, I'm going to mark quarter of my hip and also add 1.5 allowance. I'll go ahead and connect the waist to the hip. I'm going for a straight skirt, so whatever I have on the hip, I'm going to input that on the hem of the skirt. And then with a straight line, I'll connect the hip to the hem. From the center, I'll mark half of my bust band, which is 3.5. I came down by 5 inches for the length of the dart. I'll put this to a straight line. And from the center of this line, I'll mark half inch on both sides and also connect my darts together. From the waistline, I'll come down by 1 inch. I'll connect this to the side as shown. So this is going to serve as the front pattern of the skirt, okay? So while cutting on the fabric, I'm going to use this pattern to cut out the back.